Welcome to the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Anita Brooks, and here you'll find teaching topics, interviews, conversations, and coaching tips, all designed to help you level up. We all lead someone. The question is, are we leading well, exceptionally well? So join me on a quest, not for perfection, but absolutely for exceptional leadership. Oh my goodness, I have been waiting for this month because this month we are focusing on a theme that is my favorite by far topic that I get to teach and speak on. It is my favorite because it makes such a powerful impact at work and at home for human beings. I love this, but it's also the most popular thing that I speak on when I'm speaking at national or state conferences or business retreats. It is a favorite whenever I'm doing business coaching. It's a favorite sometimes when I'm brought in just to do like an hour to half a day or full day seminar because it changes lives. So I am thrilled that this month on the Exceptional Leadership Podcast, we are going to focus on the P4 personality perspective. You see, I have been a certified personality trainer for well over 25 years of my life now. It's crazy to me how fast this time has went. But I started this work in my early 20s when I worked for an organization, and I, with a facilitation partner, were put in charge of a quality initiative program for the service industry. And we were one of the first in the country to undertake such a thing, and we were the first in the state to do it. And so it was very, very exciting. It was pioneering work. But let me tell you, there were some tense and scary moments for us along the way too. But as I have learned in life, so many times, those tough times, those difficult days, those are the ones that produce fertilizer that help us grow and hopefully help us help other people more. And that's exactly what happened with the P4 personality perspective. So let me just tell you what took place. So again, early 20-something, just starting out this quality initiative, but we've been at it for a few months. So by this point, we have created different teams within this organization. So we had departmental teams. We had location teams because they had multiple locations in this organization. It was a corporate environment. And then we had positional type of teams. So one of the teams was an executive team. So these were the highest of the highest ups in the organization. And every time we met and had a session, there were two individuals out of the 10 to 11 people that we had that would sit across from each other. Now, I do not know why they did that because they could not get along. They created chaos every time we met. It was disruptive. They interrupted each other and other people, and it seemed like they just were drawn like magnets to debate and argue. And as this happened over a handful of times, I already was starting to go into solution mode, like trying to figure out what was happening, why it was happening. I was gently trying to ask questions of each of them, but it seemed as if they were almost blind to what they were doing. And then my partner and I got hauled into the president's office. And in the course of that meeting with him, we were told, I don't care what you have to do. I don't care where you go. And I really almost don't care what it costs. I need you to fix this. Wow. So what do? Well, we began to go through all kinds of educational forums to try to learn everything we could and try to figure out how to solve this problem. So we went through Jack Canfield's Train the Trainer. We were one of the early adopters of that program. We went through some different types of leadership certification programs. And actually, I became a certified business coach through this time of my life as well. And it was in that week-long, very intensive certification that they had one very brief, short segment. Because you see, this was the mid-90s. So back at that time, there wasn't quite as much emphasis on human personality as there is today. But I knew when I heard the speaker that there was something there. Now, they didn't go deep enough for it to really resolve anything in the issues that we were trying to tackle, but there was enough there that I knew that I could take it, I could build on it, and I could figure things out, or at least that was my confidence at the time. And thankfully, it did work out. So what they were teaching on was the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator personality method. And I love Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. I've done DISC, Enneagram. I mean, you name it. I've done pretty much all of them that are out there that I know of. The ones that do the animals, I think it's the lion, the otter, the bear. But here's the thing. All personality measuring programs or assessments out there really are based on the same 4 fundamental identifications that were identified and developed by Hippocrates back in 400 BC. So this goes way, way back. Hippocrates, now he used the Greek labels for the 4 basic personality types or temperaments. So he used the terms, and they were Greek because he was Greek. So he used sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. Well, who of us can remember that? And for that matter, if you've done Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, do you remember if you were an INTJ or what that meant? And so what I began to really think about is, what is it that our human minds can connect to? What helps us retain information more? And so I came across a personality method. It was the Florence and Fred Littauer method. And so on their personality spectrum, their daughter, Marita, she actually came up with the labels popular, powerful, perfect, and peaceful. And I became certified as a personality trainer through their program because I loved some of the simplicity that they had. I also loved that they touched on the heart piece, and that was missing. And I knew that if you don't deal with human emotion in any kind of business forum, then you're going to have issues because you need to deal with those human emotions most of the time before you can even get to the practicals. Otherwise, people get caught up in the emotion and then they're stuck. They can't even move forward. So I became certified, and as I went through it, I just began to see that there were a few more things that I was picking up on through my practice and through my observation and further research. And I just integrated a lot of things that I was learning real time. And eventually it just became my own program. So that's where the P4 personality perspective was born. And I'm so thrilled that I've been able to help hundreds and hundreds of groups and businesses and organizations and even individuals improve their professional and their personal lives through that work. And I have adopted that popular, powerful, perfect, peaceful label because it's easier for people to remember. And then I can more quickly teach them how to use it to improve their professional and personal lives. And that's a lot of what I did in those early days with this organization. Because see, I used, even though it was in the infancy of the work that I would go on to do, in that organization that I worked for back at the time where I had the 2 executives going at it, just combating each other, I was able to start using personality information and what I was learning and bring them to a place of peace and get them to work cooperatively and collaboratively with each other instead of in conflict and chaos all of the time. It's one of the great successes of my life, but it also became that fertilizer that helped to feed and grow what I'm able to do today. And so that's why I bring you the P4 personality perspective. And I'm so thrilled to share this information with you. If I were meeting with your group in person, one of the opening exercises I would likely do with you, because it's a very powerful moment, and it kind of sets the tone for everything else that we want to do with P4 personality perspective. But what I would do is I would show you an image, and it's called an ambiguous image. So the question that I like to raise is, does your perception match reality? All of it. And then I remind people that an openness to seeing what others see can enrich our own views. It can also lead to greater success. And so if you look up that term and you just Google it and you look up ambiguous images, there's several that can come up. But what an ambiguous image is it's some kind of a drawing or some kind of a design that when you look at it, you can actually see different things. So one of my favorites, there's one where participants will either see a young lady or an old lady. And it's funny as you sit there and people will argue with each other sometimes about what they see. Because what I would like to remind people is facts don't change, but our perceptions can. And human personality information is one way that we can expand our minds, expand our views, and expand our ability to accomplish great things. Because when we are able to work together with others, collaboratively, cooperatively, understanding that our differences are not bad, our differences are great, because what they do is they strengthen, they widen, they give us the capacity to accomplish more when we do work together. Those are not cliche pieces of information. But that image, that ambiguous image, can help set the tone for us to be willing to listen to other people and listen to hear instead of listening to shut down or listening to prove them wrong and prove ourselves right. But we begin to listen, understanding that all of us sometimes maybe don't see the whole picture, or maybe we're lacking pieces of information. See, I love teaching people how to apply personality information to enrich both their professional and their personal lives. And I can tell you, I have yet to do a training or a coaching where I've taught on personalities that people have not thought, and most of them come and even talk to me at breaks or after I'm done or at my merchandise table, to ask me, now, can I use this in my personal life? Or if it's, something where I'm doing every once in a while, I love to do like a women's event. And they'll say, will this, translate to work? 100%. If there are human relationships involved, P4 personality perspective can have an impact, and a positive one. But one thing as we start going into this more and we cover some of these things in depth this month, I want to remind you, every personality type has strengths and has weaknesses. Every personality type is needed to help make the world a better place. Because see, I believe you exist on purpose, with purpose, and for an abundant purpose. And the wiring of your personality from your birth is helping to support that. I think it's intended. I think it's God's way of making sure that all of us have our unique way to contribute. Okay. So even though there's patterns and there's commonalities among personalities, the way that you use that information, the way that you have experiences in life, the way that you have different histories, and the different things that are asked of you, it will be influenced by your personality, but your approach to it will still be unique. So even though there may be things that you have in common with others, still yet, it doesn't change the fact that you are very special, you are set apart, and you are meant to make your unique, abundant purpose a reality in this world. Okay. Back to P4 personality perspective. So first off, I also want to remind you that, so when I'm doing this in person, I use a grid. And so you can go to my website, anitabrooks.com, ANITABROOKS.com. And you can download the basic personality information there. And I do have the grid. And it has just a few bullet points of different aspects, characteristics of each of the 4 personality types. But as you look at that grid, the way that I use it, and I'm very intentional, is because I've learned that we all have a primary and a secondary personality that we operate out of over the other 2. Now, does not mean that we don't have some of all 4 personality types in us, because most of us do. But we still predominantly will act out of a primary and a secondary over the others. So let's talk about these 4 basic personality types. Now, the popular in my grid is in the top left square. Okay. Popular personality is going to be very outgoing, sociable by nature, talkative. They're going to be responsive. They're also going to be easygoing, a little sensitive, lively, carefree. And unless they've had some kind of childhood abuse or trauma, or even that can happen in adulthood, but most often it comes from childhood, most popular personalities will tend to be physically touchy-feely. They'll touch someone like on the arm or something like that, or they'll be a hugger or shake hands. Not all personality types are comfortable with that. But popular personalities by nature tend to be. They're also storytellers, and they're colorful, they're bright. So they're expressive in how they talk. There's a lot of emotion and energy in what they say. They tend to wear bright colors. They bring a lot of energy into a room, and many times they're called the life of the party. And so we would term them as an extrovert. Now, again, if I were in person with your group, I would ask, what would you say an extrovert is? How would you define them? And so people will give, various answers to that. Many times I'll hear outgoing, confident, loud. Some people say obnoxious. Obviously, they're probably not an extrovert, because we all tend to think our personality type is the best, and everybody either thinks the way we should or they should think the way that we do. But those are some terms that come to the forefront. Well, my favorite, and I believe the most accurate definition of an extrovert is this. An extrovert does their highest, best, and most creative thinking out loud in conversation, talking with other people, bouncing ideas off, brainstorming, think tanks, whatever terminology you want to use, they want to talk it out with another human being. And so if they're not able to do that, an extrovert will oftentimes feel stifled. They almost feel as if they're paralyzed and they can't think. We're going to come back to that because there's a very key point that can really help you in your organizational goals and objectives, and whether you're able to make progress based on just understanding the difference between an extrovert and an introvert in what I just said. But we'll come back to that. So let's talk about the powerful personality. Powerfuls tend to be careful, they're strategic, they're thoughtful, they tend to be reliable, very controlled. They are, sometimes they're like, change agents, and they're excitable, they're assertive, they're optimistic, they're active, and they can be restless. Like, these are people who like change. And if there's not enough change, oftentimes they will almost force change. They also can be very impulsive, and they think quickly. So they go through life and they're looking at how much can I get done and how fast can I accomplish it? So one thing I didn't tell you about the populars are driven by the word fun. So in life for them, they're looking to have fun. If it's not fun, they want to figure out how to make it fun. If work is not fun, they want to somehow make a game out of it or make some kind of competition. They'll even be competitive with themselves just to make it more fun and interesting and exciting. A powerful personality, however, has a different approach. So for them, they're looking to make sure that they get accomplishment out of it. They are goal, objective, mission-oriented personality types. They are also natural leaders, so they have no issue delegating. So oftentimes, because they're also visionary, they'll come up with some great plan, and then they want to start like going through, and they're almost like generals, like saying, you do this, you do that, you take on this, I'm going to make you the champion of that. And before you know it, then they've got this team built because they are natural team builders and motivators as well. So they are also extroverts, but they're extroverts in different ways than their popular counterparts. So where a popular, their extroversion is more socially oriented. They're more about relationships and friendships and family and those type of things. Not that powerfuls don't see those things as important, because they do, but oftentimes for them, it's not of primary importance. So for a powerful personality, it's more project focused. It's more about what we're going to accomplish and get done. So you can see the contrast between the two, even though they are both extroverted personalities. Now, if you're looking at my grid, you would have the left top would be popular, right top would be powerful. The bottom on the right would be the perfect personality. Now, perfect personalities, if you fall into this category, I am so sorry, I have bad news. This does not mean that you're perfect. However, you already know that. Because a perfect personality does have very high standards. They want everything to go right. Right is the lens in which they look at life through. They want everything to go as planned. They want things to be flawless. They want themselves to be flawless. But as hard as sometimes they can seem to other personality types, they're hardest on themselves. They can be very critical, cynical, skeptical. They also are highly organized, though, and analytical and research driven. They are quieter by nature. They are reserved. They're realistic. And they also deal with a lot of inner anxiety because, if life doesn't go perfectly, that can make you really anxious. So sometimes it's tough on them. But they also are very drawn to like things that are soothing to the soul. They have a deep sensitivity. So their sensitivity comes in solitude and solace. And again, those soothing things. So nature is something that oftentimes they're drawn to. Music and art are things that they are often drawn to. And so many of them are very artistic, or they're very nature driven in what they prefer to do with their personal time. But perfect personalities also are introverts. And so if we said that the extrovert does their highest, best, most creative thinking out loud, doesn't it make sense that the introvert does their highest, best, most creative thinking alone, in solitude, to themselves, without noise pollution around them? And just think about what kind of a difference that can make. But again, we're going to come back to that in just a couple of moments. But do you see, even though there are great differences between the three personalities we've covered so far, how crucial each of them are to helping make the world a better place? We need all of them. And we also need our fourth, and by far not our last, but our one of our very important personalities is the peaceful. Okay, so the peaceful is the final portion of our quadrant of the personalities. So the peaceful would fall into the lower left of my grid. The peaceful personality is even-tempered. They are careful, but they are reliable. They are thoughtful. They are passive. They are calm by nature, so they can make great mediators. But peaceful personalities also, interestingly enough, they're like the most stubborn of all the personality types. And so that's funny. I call them the silent rebels. Now, it's not always funny on the receiving end of that. I'm married to a peaceful personality. So I'm a powerful popular. My husband is a peaceful perfect. And let me tell you, his stubbornness has been hard to take at times. But at the same time, I've also come to understand that most often when he's being stubborn, it's because he lacks confidence or he's not comfortable in something. And those are two very important pieces for this personality type. And it's something that sometimes they struggle with. And so for the rest of us who are not in the peaceful category, we would do well to be mindful and respectful of that. Something else about a peaceful personality that it makes me sad because we really celebrate extroversion in society today, but peaceful personalities are often ignored or they're treated as if they're less intelligent or by some even invisible. And what a shame, because one thing about the peaceful personality, they are natural sponges. They are constantly like absorbing information. And so where many of us are talking at and over each other, this personality type is just gathering it all in. So when I'm in a group setting, and once I've made sure that I've built an environment where it feels safe and comfortable, then oftentimes I like to ask a peaceful what their thoughts are, what their insights are, what their opinion is. Because I'm going to tell you something, they have wisdom and they're witty. They can be so funny. And if we don't draw that out of them, though, they're not usually just going to offer it on their own. So that's something for some of us to remember about peaceful personalities. And peacefuls, finally, they are also introverts. So again, doing their highest, best, most creative thinking alone in solitude, in silence. So think about that. You have your extroverts, you're popular, you're powerful, and they want to talk things out. They want to think it through together. They want to, the powerful is going to want to problem solve together. The popular is going to want to make sure they're on the right track. You know, they have a little bit of insecurity that they want to make sure that they're checking things with other people. And then you have your perfect personality who's like, if you'll just leave me alone, let me focus, let me finish what I start, then I'll figure it out. I'll do the research. I'll analyze the data and come up with a plan because they're very good planners. Peacefuls will oftentimes think to themselves, if you'll just let me process, if you'll let me study things, if you'll let me build up my confidence and my comfort in this and come up with what I'm going to say and what I think is the right thing to say or to contribute, I want to help. But you've got to give me the ability to be alone with my thoughts so that I feel the confidence I need to share. So can you think about how that might create a contrast in the working world? Because I see it every day with every client I work with in my P4 Power Coaching practice. Because if you have a strong extrovert and a strong introvert, and they need to work on a project together, that introvert has an intrinsic, soul-deep need to be alone with their thoughts, to maybe gather information, to think things through before they ever talk about it. The extrovert, however, has a need to, let's talk about it. Let's process this together. Let's think it through. Let's teamwork this. And you can see how the introvert can get very frustrated because they're not getting the silence that they need in order to be able to think. And the extrovert is not getting the cooperation and the energy they need so they can think because their definitions of thinking are very different. Something else that I will bring to light is the way that we identify or define something pleasant, we'll say, can look very different for an extrovert and an introvert. So I want you to imagine for a moment that an extrovert and an introvert go to dinner together. Now, the meal is good in both of their estimations. As a matter of fact, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being lowest, 10 being the highest, they would both rate this meal an 8, so pretty high. If you were to ask the extrovert, how was your meal? The extrovert would typically say something along these lines. Oh, it was great. I loved it. It was fantastic. It was amazing. If they're powerful, they might even say, it was awesome. Many powerfuls love the word awesome. Well, see, in the introvert's mind, oftentimes they think, why do you have to be so dramatic? Why do you have to exaggerate everything? My gosh, it was good, but really, come on. It wasn't over the top. And so sometimes they don't speak it out loud, but they'll get frustrated because they feel like that the extrovert makes too much of things and there's too much emotion that they pour into the way that they describe things. The introvert, however, if you were to ask them, how was your meal? They would say things like this. It was good. It was all right. It was fine. It was okay. And do you see the difference? Not only is there a difference in the verbiage that an introvert uses versus an extrovert, but there's a difference in the tone of voice, in the decibel, in the energy that they put behind it. So the extrovert is often thinking, what's wrong? As a matter of fact, an extrovert will voice it, where usually an introvert won't always voice their feelings, but an extrovert will. And they'll say, what was wrong with it? And the introvert's going, nothing. I told you it was fine. Well, exactly. I can tell there's something you didn't like. What didn't you like? No, it was all right. Well, I know, but you don't have to hold back with me. Just tell me the truth. How do you really feel? And the poor introvert's sitting there going, what do they want me to say? I told them it was good. Then they're caught almost trying to explain themselves. What in the world does this extrovert want me to say? When the fact is, both of them are truly communicating and relating what they see as the same value, but they have different ways of expressing themselves. So the introvert is not as emotionally or energetically expressive. The extrovert is very emotive in how they speak, which is hard sometimes for the introvert to take because it almost sometimes feels like the extrovert is coming at them. And you can see how that by itself can create its own conflict, whether at work or at home. So the other thing to take into consideration when you're looking at the grid is I want you to think about how the alignment that I have is the popular and the peaceful are on the left and the powerful and the perfect are on the right. So that's again with intent. So the popular and the peaceful personalities, both of them are very people oriented. So they're constantly thinking about people. They're thinking about how decisions and actions and behaviors and projects are going to affect people, impact people. What are people going to think? What are people going to say? But so much of it goes to people. Whereas on the perfect and the powerful side of the spectrum, it's more about how are we going to get this done? How are we going to accomplish this? When are we going to be able to get it? When they think about people, it's like, who do we need to get involved so we can complete this, so we can meet the goals? And so you can see how that kind of a contrast can really cause an issue too. It's just that the popular personality will oftentimes very much be thinking more like in groups of people, where the peaceful personality is more thinking one-on-one with people. So a popular personality loves more group interactions, social interactions. A peaceful personality is typically very uncomfortable with that. Don't ever think that you're going to reward a peaceful personality by calling them up in front of a lot of people, even if it's their peers that they know very well, and give them some kind of award or plaque, because it's actually going to embarrass them. Where a popular personality loves being in front of everybody, and they really appreciate, getting that, pat on the back in front of their peers and other people, because they are more comfortable on a stage. The powerful personality is more about how do we work together? How do we get this together? How do we use everybody's different talents and skills and draw that into the equation to accomplish what we want to? Whereas the perfect personality is like, if you'll just leave me alone, let me just focus, let me complete what I start, I'll get the job done. And so even though there are variances, still they have a focus based on the right spectrum, which is, again, very project or productivity driven, versus the left side of the spectrum, which is more people focused. Okay, a lot of information, but I think you're already beginning to see why this is such a popular topic and why I'm so often asked to speak on it, or to coach on it, or to do trainings on this. It can be life-changing. It's changed my life in very meaningful ways. And I don't mean just from the point of me teaching it. I'm talking about applying it. I'm talking about doing it day in and day out. As a powerful, popular personality, I have become very mindful that I need to use my 2 ears twice as much as I use the one mouth God gave me, so I listen twice as much as I speak. I've developed myself and become a really decent listener. As a matter of fact, many people have complimented me and said that I'm a great listener. That was not natural to me. That was something that I learned over time. And it's something that I would strongly urge any extrovert to think about, is to be mindful and respectful and intentional to listen to your introverted counterparts. I would also urge our extroverts in the group to make sure that you are giving respect, that you are deferring sometimes and drawing out the wisdom and the insights, the experience, the education that our introverted friends and coworkers and colleagues can bring to the table, instead of just dominating everything. I know we don't mean to. It just happens naturally because, again, that's how we're wired. But we cannot use that as an excuse to walk over others. And for every personality type, as we end this particular session, I just want to remind you that your personality fuels your intrinsic drivers. The word intrinsic means soul deep. It's so deeply embedded in you that you don't even think about it. You don't even sometimes realize that this is why you're behaving the way that you are. But your personality fuels intrinsic drivers that influence not only what we human beings do, but why we do it. So when we come back next time, we'll start talking and we'll dig into some of the individual traits for each of the 4 personality types. And then we will eventually get into polar opposites, and I will ultimately want to share with you why I am 100% convinced that human personality does not change over time. Many experts, and I respectfully agree to disagree with them, teach that our personality changes, and many of us will even become convinced of that ourselves. But I do not believe that that is true. I believe our core inner wiring always stays with us, and I can prove it by 5 things that can happen to us that will drive us to our most natural personality states. It's just that we are human beings, that God has given us a brain. We can learn information. We can learn to overcome weaknesses. We can learn to capitalize on our strengths. And through that, sometimes if we are healthy in the way that we go through life, we learn to become more balanced in how we behave day in and day out because of the things that we learn from those who are polar opposite from us. It's something that I have been able to do to a certain degree today. I have a lot further to go, a lot further that I want to go. And every day I'm committed to doing just that. So until next time, I just want to remind you of this. Every day we have opportunities to make a difference. In order to do that, we need to make sure that we stay intentional and that we remain exceptional. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. There's magic in meeting with an objective, and I always have an objective for you, not only in these episodes, but also from the other resources I offer on my website, anitabrooks.com. That's ANITABROOKS.com. There you'll find information on digital courses, webinars, books, workbooks, of course, my in-person P4 power coaching for businesses and organizations. And if you need a speaker for your conference or your strategic retreat, I'm your gal. But I'm also excited to let you know about a new service that we're offering. For less than half the price of a daily Starbucks latte for a month, you can join our P4 Power Coaching community. This is a monthly membership where you'll get insider tips. And you'll also be able to join our monthly Zoom meetings that are one part strategy sessions, one part mastermind, one part networking, one part coaching. I can promise you, you'll not only learn from me, but you'll learn from others in the group. We'll also have monthly webinars as part of the P4 Power Coaching community, and we'll have coaching resources and exercises. And you'll get first opportunities and special offers for many of the other things that we have to offer. And of course, you will get leadership encouragements. The P4 Power Coaching community is all about growth, success, and celebrating our wins. And remember, it's never too late for a fresh start with fresh faith. So embrace your exceptional leadership impact with fresh resolve to make the difference you were made for.